Ethan's heart raced as he trudged through the dense jungle, the weight of his backpack pulling on his shoulders. His boots squelched in the thick mud as he stepped carefully over twisted roots and sharp rocks. The dense green canopy above blocked most of the sun, but the humidity was almost unbearable. Sweat dripped from his brow, but he pushed on, knowing he had no choice. His ship had crashed here, on a hostile alien world, and his only hope was to find shelter before nightfall. The planet was known for its dangerous wildlife, and any misstep could be his last. His mind raced back to the events that had led him to this point. Ethan had been on a mission to scout new territories for the United Earth colonies when a sudden, violent attack by an unknown alien ship had destroyed his vessel. He was the only one who had survived, and now, stranded on an unfamiliar planet, he had to rely on his training to survive. As he moved through the underbrush, he kept his senses sharp, alert for any signs of danger. The air was thick with the sounds of alien creatures, squawks, growls, and the rustling of leaves. Ethan knew he had to keep moving, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every so often his eyes darted to the shadows, but he saw nothing. After hours of walking, Ethan spotted something in the distance, an abandoned structure. It stood in the middle of a clearing, half hidden by the jungle, its stone walls weathered by time. His heart lifted with hope. It was a sign of civilization, or at least something that might offer shelter. He pushed through the underbrush and made his way toward the building, keeping low to avoid detection. When he finally reached the entrance, Ethan paused, his hand resting on the cool stone. He listened intently. There were no sounds coming from inside, and he couldn't sense any movement. Cautiously, he stepped inside, his boots echoing on the hard floor. The building was dark, the only light coming from a few cracks in the walls, where the sun filtered through. It appeared to be some kind of outpost. There were remnants of old furniture scattered around, some pieces broken, and others covered in dust. Ethan didn't have much time to investigate. He needed to find a place to rest, but just as he moved deeper into the building, a sudden noise froze him in his tracks, a soft scraping sound, followed by a low growl. Ethan's instincts kicked in. His hand went to the blaster at his side, but before he could draw it, a figure stepped into the dim light blocking his path. It was a woman. No, not a woman, an alien. Her tall, muscular form towered over him, and she had the most intense eyes he'd ever seen, glowing red, filled with an icy coldness that sent a chill down his spine. Her skin was a deep, dark purple, and she wore a suit of armor that shimmered. In the dim light, the edges jagged like the claws of a predator. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as she raised a long, curved blade toward him, its tip glinting ominously. He knew at that moment that she was not here to offer help. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice like gravel, rough and commanding. "What are you doing on our world, human?" Ethan swallowed hard, his mind racing for an answer. He couldn't afford to show fear, not now. He was trained for situations like this, but this was different. The alien before him was no ordinary soldier. She radiated power, and from the way she stood, blade raised, he knew she was dangerous. "I'm just passing through," Ethan said, trying to sound confident. "I crashed here. My ship. It's gone." She didn't lower the blade. Her eyes narrowed, scanning him like a predator assessing prey. "Lies," she sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. "No human comes here by accident. You are here to invade, to destroy. I will not let you leave." Ethan stood his ground, trying to hide his unease. The last thing he wanted was to fight, but he knew it might be his only option. His thoughts raced as he tried to remember anything from his training that could help him in this situation. "Look," he said, keeping his voice calm. "I don't want trouble. I'm not here to fight, I just need to survive." The alien woman's lip curled into a cruel smile, revealing sharp teeth. "Survival?" she repeated, as if the word itself was foreign to her. "You humans have no right to survive here. This planet is ours. You are nothing but a nuisance." She stepped closer, the blade still pointed at his throat, and Ethan could feel the coldness of her weapon. He had never faced anything like this before. It was one thing to fight against aliens on the battlefield, but this was personal. This alien woman was full of hatred, and he was her target. Without warning, she swung the blade toward him, aiming for his neck. Ethan's instincts kicked in and he ducked just in time. The blade whistled through the air, missing him by inches. He quickly backed up, his heart pounding as he drew his own blaster. But the woman wasn't finished. She lunged at him with surprising speed, her blade flashing through the air. Ethan barely had time to react. He raised his blaster to fire, but before he could squeeze the trigger, she knocked it from his hand with a swift strike. The weapon clattered to the ground, useless. "You think you can defeat me, human?" she hissed, her eyes glowing brighter now, filled with contempt. "You are weak. You are nothing." Ethan's mind raced as he searched for any way out. He couldn't match her strength, but he wasn't about to give up. He had to survive. "I'm not weak," he said, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. "And I'm not giving up." The alien woman tilted her head, intrigued by his words. She lowered her blade just slightly, studying him with an almost curious expression. "You humans are interesting," she said, her voice tinged with something unexpected. Was it respect? "But no matter how much you resist, you will not leave here alive." Ethan clenched his fists, trying to think of his next move. He couldn't. Just stand there and wait to die. He needed to survive, and for that he had to outsmart her. "Why don't you put the blade down?" Ethan suggested, his voice calm. "I don't want to fight. We can work something out." The alien woman's expression darkened. "You think I'll listen to you? You're just a human, nothing more, nothing less." "I'm more than just a human," Ethan said, his voice rising slightly. "We've survived things your species could never imagine. We don't just fight, we endure. You think you can break me with a blade? You're wrong." There was a moment of silence, and Ethan wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life by challenging her so boldly. But then, something unexpected happened. The alien woman, Zarka, stepped back, lowering her blade slightly. For a brief moment there was doubt in her eyes, just a flicker but enough to give Ethan hope. "You think your words can change anything?" she sneered, though there was less venom in her voice now. "I will give you one chance, human. Tell me why you're here. If you answer correctly, I may let you live." Ethan took a deep breath, seizing the opportunity. "I'm here because I have no choice. I'm stranded and all I want is to survive. I'm not your enemy." Zarka's gaze hardened, but she said nothing. The blade was still raised, but it seemed a little less threatening now. Ethan couldn't help but wonder if his words had made an impact. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was more to this alien than he had first thought. But whatever the case, he knew one thing for sure. His survival depended on staying calm and finding a way to connect. Even with someone like her, Ethan stood, motionless, eyes locked on Zarka, the alien warrior who had him at the edge of her blade. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Her cold, calculating gaze never wavered, and though her posture remained confident, a small part of Ethan wondered if she was actually considering his words. The sharp edge of her venomous blade gleamed in the dim light of the outpost, and he could almost feel the cool metal against his skin. Despite the few inches that separated them, the moment stretched on in silence, the air between them growing heavier. "I'm still waiting for your answer, human," Zarka said, her voice rough and low. It was as if she were daring him to continue speaking, as if testing whether his earlier words had been a bluff. Ethan knew she was right to question him. He was out of his depth here. His only chance was to keep his composure and hope that whatever strange connection had formed between them during their brief exchange could somehow turn into a way out. But deep down, he could feel the weight of her presence. She was strong, not just physically but mentally as well. "I'm not your enemy," Ethan repeated, his voice steady. "I'm just a soldier stranded here. I don't have any reason to fight you. All I want is to survive." Zarka's lips curled into a tight smile, but there was no warmth in it. "Survive? You are a human. You are nothing more than a pest. You crash your ships onto our worlds and then you beg for mercy. But there is no mercy here, no second chances. Ethan's chest tightened, but he refused to back down. His mind raced as he tried to think of anything that might change her mind. He had to buy himself time. He wasn't just up against her strength. He was up against everything she represented. The fearsome, prideful aliens that saw humans as insignificant. But something about Zarka made him hesitate. It wasn't just the danger she posed. It was the fact that there seemed to be a certain logic to her anger. Maybe, just maybe, if he could appeal to that logic, he might survive. "Look," Ethan said slowly, taking a step back to create some distance. "I know humans have made mistakes. We've done things that have hurt other species. But not all of us are like that. Not all humans want war. Some of us just want to build, to explore, to survive." Zarka's Ethan stood alone in the dimly lit outpost, still trying to process what had just happened. The alien warrior, Zarka, had let him go. For a moment, it felt like a victory, but he knew better than to let his guard down. She hadn't spared him out of kindness or mercy. It was something else, something he wasn't yet sure of. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and took a deep breath. His heart was still racing, but the adrenaline was beginning to fade. He had narrowly escaped death, but the tension between them lingered in the air. Zarka had been a threat from the moment they met, and that hadn't changed. Ethan glanced around the outpost, his mind racing with thoughts of survival. It wasn't safe here. The planet was hostile, and Zarka's presence only made things more complicated. But he couldn't just leave. He needed shelter and supplies, and he wasn't about to give up without a fight. He moved cautiously through the building, checking the old crates and containers for anything useful. Most of the supplies were long gone, but there were some basic tools and scraps of equipment left behind. Ethan's fingers brushed over the broken pieces of technology, his mind working quickly. The crash had destroyed most of his gear, and he had no choice but to make do with what he could find. As he rummaged through the debris, he couldn't shake the feeling that Zarka's words had struck a chord. She had looked at him with something different in her eyes, something that wasn't just contempt. It was curiosity. There had been a moment, however brief, where she seemed to consider his words. Could he be right? Could humans and aliens find a way to coexist? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps outside. Ethan froze, his body tensing. Had Zarka returned? Was she coming back to finish what she had started? He crouched, low, moving silently to the corner of the room. The shadows in the building shifted as someone, or something, entered the structure. The air grew heavy with the tension of the unknown. Ethan slowly peered around the corner, his hand instinctively reaching for the blaster at his side. The figure in the doorway wasn't Zarka. It was another alien, smaller, but still imposing. This one wore a cloak that covered most of its features, but Ethan could make out the sharp, angular features of its face. The alien didn't seem to notice Ethan right away. It was too busy scanning the room, its eyes glowing faintly as it took in the surroundings. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he weighed his options. Should he hide and wait for the alien to leave? Or should he take the risk and confront it? The alien's gaze swept across the room, stopping just short of where Ethan was crouched. His breath caught in his throat, but he didn't move. The alien turned its head, seemingly sensing something, but then it continued walking deeper into the outpost, its footsteps echoing in the silence. Ethan exhaled slowly, his muscles relaxing. He was still alive. Again. But how long could he keep evading danger? His situation was becoming more and more precarious. He waited a few minutes, letting the tension ease before he moved out of the shadows. He had to keep moving, keep thinking, ahead. But just as he was about to leave the room, a voice called out from behind him. "You've been busy." Ethan spun around, his heart leaping in his chest. Zarka stood in the doorway, her piercing eyes locking onto his. Her expression was unreadable, but there was no mistaking the tension in the air between them. She had followed him. Ethan didn't. Back down. His hand moved slowly toward the blaster at his side, but he didn't pull it out. He had learned the hard way that a quick move could lead to disaster. "I didn't think you'd come back," Ethan said, his voice steady. "But I'm glad you did." Zarka raised an eyebrow, her lips curling slightly. You think I came here for you? She asked, her voice tinged with amusement. No, I came here to see if you're telling the truth. Ethan's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Zarka stepped into the room, her tall figure looming over him. I've been sent to eliminate all humans who set foot on this planet. It's my duty. But something about you, it's different. She narrowed her eyes, studying him closely. I'm not sure if it's your courage or your foolishness, but I want to know more. Ethan's mind raced. She was here for him again, but this time it was different. She wasn't threatening him. She was curious. This could be the opportunity he needed. You've been listening to what I've said, haven't you? Ethan asked, his voice calm but insistent. You've been questioning your own orders. Zarka didn't answer immediately. She seemed to weigh his words, her eyes flicking to the floor before meeting his again. I don't question my orders, she said at last, her tone hard. But I do question your species. You're not like the others. Ethan didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. It was clear she wasn't entirely convinced, but it also meant she hadn't made up her mind yet. And that was enough for him to hold on to hope. I told you, Ethan said, taking a step toward her. We're not here to invade. We're just trying to survive. I'm not asking for you to let us go free, but I'm asking for a chance to prove that we can live in peace. Zarka's gaze softened ever so slightly, though it was only a fleeting moment. You think I'm going to let you live just because you say so? She asked, her voice still cold, but not as harsh as before. You think that after everything I've seen, I'll just walk away? Ethan felt a rush of frustration but held it in. I don't expect you to walk away. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for a chance to change your mind. Zarka stared at him for a long moment. The silence stretched between them like a tense cord, but slowly she lowered her weapon, her posture relaxing. Ethan didn't dare make any sudden moves. I'll give you one chance, human, Zarka said, her voice low. But don't mistake this for mercy. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to see if you can prove that you're worth the time. Ethan nodded, his heart pounding. This was the opening he needed, but he knew it wouldn't last. One wrong word, one wrong move, and it could all be over. Zarka turned and walked toward the door, pausing just before she exited. You've made it this far, she said, her voice echoing in the stillness of the outpost. But the real test is yet to come. Ethan watched her leave, his thoughts spinning. He had just been given a chance, but he couldn't afford to waste it. He didn't know what Zarka's real intentions were, but he knew that her words, her doubts, were his lifeline. He had no choice but to find a way to prove that humanity was worth something more than what the rest of the galaxy thought. Ethan sat in the dim light of the outpost, his mind racing. He had narrowly escaped death once again, but now Zarka's words echoed in his mind. The real test is yet to come. What did she mean by that? Was she still testing him? Or was she trying to manipulate him into making a mistake? For the past few hours, Ethan had been reflecting on everything that had happened. From the moment his ship had crashed on this hostile planet, he'd been fighting for survival. But now, it seemed like his fight was no longer just for his life. It was a battle for his humanity. Zarka had given him a chance, and he wasn't about to waste it, but that didn't make things easier. The alien warrior had made it clear that she wasn't interested in mercy or kindness. She was a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. Yet something had shifted in her, something that made her hesitate when she should have struck. The question was why. Ethan stood up, stretching his stiff muscles. His body was sore from the constant tension of the past few days, but his mind was sharp. He needed to think. His survival depended on it. He had no idea what Zarka's next move would be, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't afford to sit idle. He had to stay one step ahead. His thoughts were interrupted by the sudden sound of footsteps approaching the outpost. His heart skipped a beat and his hand instinctively reached for his blaster. But as the figure entered, he quickly realized it wasn't Zarka this time. It was another alien. This one smaller, with dark, leathery skin and a set of sharp, glittering eyes. The alien's posture was different from Zarka's, more cautious, almost hesitant. Ethan didn't move. his eyes narrowing as he studied the newcomer. The alien stopped just inside the doorway, its gaze scanning the room. Ethan could sense that this was no enemy, at least not right now. But he wasn't about to let his guard down. "What do you want?" Ethan asked, his voice firm but calm. The alien tilted its head, studying Ethan for a moment before speaking. "I was told to watch you," it said, its voice oddly smooth. "Zarka's orders." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Zarka's orders? She's testing me, isn't she?" The alien didn't respond immediately, its eyes shifting toward the corner of the room where the remnants of Ethan's ship lay in ruin. It seemed to consider something before speaking again. "You're different from the others," it said slowly, as if unsure of its own words. "The humans I've encountered, they never act like you." Ethan couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Different from the others? Was this alien implying that not all humans were seen as a threat? That there was something about him, something he'd done or said, that made him stand out? Before he could ask more, the alien continued. "Zarka doesn't believe your words. She doesn't think humans can change. But I've seen enough to know that she's wrong. You've shown more strength than I expected." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Strength? Was this alien praising him? "What are you trying to say?" Ethan asked carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. The alien stepped closer, its eyes softening. "I'm saying that Zark..." The morning sun barely pierced the thick, tangled branches of the alien jungle. Ethan stood at the entrance of the outpost, his eyes scanning the horizon. The air was humid and heavy with the scent of strange plants, but Ethan had grown used to it. It was a world he hadn't chosen, but it was the one he had to survive in. His mind was still spinning from Zarka's words the day before. Actions speak louder than words. He knew she wasn't just testing him, she was measuring him. Every move, every word he spoke was under scrutiny. And for the first time since he had arrived on this planet, Ethan realized something that chilled him to the bone. His survival didn't depend just on himself anymore. It depended on whether Zarka decided he was worth the risk. He had been given a chance to prove himself, but now he had to live up to it. No more hesitation, no more waiting. If he was going to change her mind, he had to do it now. He had to show her that he wasn't just a lost human stranded on an alien world. He was someone worth fighting for. The sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Ethan tensed, his eyes darting to the source. He didn't need to look twice to know who it was. Zarka. She was alone this time, her armor gleaming in the sunlight. The venomous blade at her side was sheathed, but Ethan didn't feel any less threatened. The way she carried herself, the confidence in every step, told him she was still the same warrior. Perhaps even more dangerous now that she had seen the human resilience she hadn't expected. Her eyes met his, cold but sharp. She didn't speak immediately, just studied him with an intensity that made Ethan's heart race. The silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. Then finally she spoke. "You've had your chance, human," she said, her voice like a low growl. "But now we see if you can survive what comes next." Ethan stood tall, his back straight, trying to show no fear. He had to remain strong. "What do you mean by that?" Zarka didn't answer right away. Instead, she motioned for him to follow her, turning and walking toward the deeper jungle. Ethan hesitated for a moment, but then followed her, knowing he had no choice. This was the test. This was his chance. As they walked, the dense foliage parted to reveal a clearing, where several other alien warriors were gathered, their eyes watching him closely. Ethan's pulse quickened as he took in the scene. These were not the friendly faces he had hoped for. They were there to judge him, to decide whether he was worthy of survival. Zarka stopped in the center of the clearing, her eyes never leaving Ethan. "This is the final test," she said, her voice cold and commanding. "You will fight. Prove to us that you are not just a weak human, and we will let you leave here alive. Fail, and your life will end here." Ethan swallowed hard, but he didn't flinch. He had fought before, many times, but this was different. These were alien warriors, and they were not playing by human rules. He had no idea what kind of combat they would expect, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't back down now. "I'm ready," Ethan said, his voice steady. Zarka nodded and stepped back, signaling the other warriors. They didn't move, but their eyes were locked on him, waiting for him to make the first move. The tension was thick, like the air before a thunderstorm. Ethan's mind raced as he tried to anticipate what would happen next. He wasn't just fighting for his life, he was fighting for his place in this alien world. One of the warriors stepped forward, a tall, muscular figure with dark, scaly skin. The warrior raised its hands as if preparing for a physical contest, and Ethan knew this was his opponent. Ethan felt his muscles tighten as he braced for the fight. His training kicked in. He couldn't afford to make a mistake. He needed to use everything he had learned from his time as a soldier. But what could he use against someone so much stronger and faster than him? The alien warrior lunged at him, quick and relentless. Ethan barely had time to react as the alien's fist came at him like a hammer. He ducked just in time, the blow missing by inches, but he knew this wouldn't be enough. He couldn't rely on speed alone. The alien warrior circled him, watching his every move, waiting for the moment to strike. Ethan's heart raced, and for a split second doubt crept into his mind. What if I can't do this? But then he remembered Zarka's words. Actions speak louder than words. He couldn't hesitate. Not now. With a sudden burst of energy, Ethan sprang forward, grabbing the warrior's wrist just as it swung another blow. He twisted the arm, using the alien's own momentum against it, and threw the warrior off balance. The alien crashed to the ground with a grunt, but it was far from finished. The warrior recovered quickly, rolling back to its feet and charging at Ethan once more. But this time, Ethan was ready. He dodged the alien's attack, slipping under its reach and using his legs to sweep the warrior off its feet. The alien crashed to the ground again, but this time it didn't get back up immediately. Ethan stood over the fallen warrior, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. He had won this round, but it was far from over. He could see the other warriors watching him, and their expressions were unreadable. Had he impressed them? Or was this just the beginning of something much worse? Zarka stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. For a moment, Ethan felt as though she was examining him, not just as a fighter, but as a person. It was almost as if she was trying to decide if he had passed her test. Then she spoke. "Not bad, human," she said, her voice laced with something that sounded almost like approval. "You're stronger than I thought, but there's more to surviving than just fighting." Ethan stood tall, his breath steadying as he faced her. "What do you mean?" Zarka gestured to the other warriors, who were now surrounding him. "The battle is not over. This was just a test of your strength. Now we will test your mind. We will see if you can think as quickly as you fight. You must prove that you can survive not just with your fists, but with your intellect." Ethan's mind raced. More? He had to prove himself even more. But he had no choice. He had already made it this far. Zarka turned away, her voice cold once more. "Prepare yourself. The true test begins now." Before Ethan could ask what that meant, the warriors stepped closer, forming a circle around him. They weren't attacking yet, but the tension was palpable. Ethan felt his heart beat faster as the circle tightened. He had already proven his strength, but now he had to prove his mind. Zarka watched him from the edge of the circle, her eyes sharp, waiting to see what he would do next. Ethan took a deep breath and focused. This wasn't just about fighting anymore. It was about survival. He had to think. He had to act quickly. One of the warriors in the circle stepped forward, holding something in its hand. It was a small, spherical device, pulsing with a soft blue light. Ethan's eyes darted to it as the warrior tossed it toward him. Without thinking, Ethan caught the device in midair, his fingers wrapping around it instinctively. The moment he held it, the device activated, and a series of flashing symbols appeared on the surface. It was a puzzle, a test of his intellect. Ethan's mind raced as he examined the symbols, trying to understand the pattern. This was it. This was the moment he had been preparing for. As the symbol shifted, he realized what he had to do. With a sharp twist, he manipulated the device, solving the puzzle in an instant. The symbol stopped flashing, and the device powered down, leaving only a soft hum in the air. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Zarka's voice cut through it like a blade. "Well done, human," she said. "You have passed." Ethan's heart swelled with relief. He had done it. He had proven his worth, not just with his strength but with his mind. But this was only the beginning. Zarka had given him a chance, but the real test was still ahead. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the alien jungle. Ethan stood at the edge of the clearing, his chest rising and falling with each deep breath. His muscles ached from the battle, but his mind was clearer than it had been in days. The final test had been passed, but the challenge wasn't over. Zarka, standing several feet away, still watched him carefully, her sharp eyes studying his every movement. Ethan had managed to prove himself through strength, intellect, and perseverance, but he knew she was far from satisfied. The battle was over for now, but something told him it was only the beginning of a much larger game. "Impressive," Zarka said, her voice breaking the silence. "You've done well so far, human." Ethan turned to face her, his expression serious but calm. "Thank you. But I haven't earned anything yet. I still need to prove that I'm worth keeping alive." Zarka's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. Instead, she nodded slowly, as if considering his words. The silence between them stretched, and Ethan could feel the weight of her gaze upon him. "You're different," Zarka finally said. "Most humans would have crumbled under the pressure by now. You've survived everything I've thrown at you. Not many can say that." Ethan remained silent, his eyes locked with hers. He wasn't sure where this conversation was headed, but he didn't want to make any sudden moves. He had learned over the past few days that every word counted. "But survival isn't everything," Zarka continued, her voice softer now, almost contemplative. "The real question is why you're still here. Why do you keep fighting? What makes you think you deserve to live?" Ethan hesitated, the question catching him off guard. Why was he still here? He had asked himself that many times since he crash-landed on this alien world. At first it was about survival, but now it